They tried to make you believe Islam was only for men. They pushed women background, erased them. And sadly, even some ignorant Muslims repeated this lie. But the truth was different. Today, we open the forgotten pages of Islam, and you will see, women were never silent. They stood strong at the center on the front lines with courage and iman. Today, you'll meet 15 women, the untold heroes of Islam. These women, from different lands, different times, and different struggles, they are a light for Muslim women today. Khadija bint Khuwaylid. The courage of one woman can change the fate of a whole ummah, just like Khadija. Born into one of the noble families of Mecca, Khadija was respected from a young age for her dignity, intelligence, and honesty. Even though she lived a wealthy life, she was pure-hearted and far from worldly greed. That is why she was called Tahira, meaning the pure woman in Mecca. She owned one of the biggest caravans in Mecca. In a trade world ruled by men, she was one of the rare women who managed her own business. Her caravans stretched to the horizon in the desert, and her profits fed half of Mecca. Yet every year, she gave most of her wealth to the poor and freed many slaves. When she was looking for a trustworthy man to lead her caravans, someone recommended a young man named Muhammad. He was in his 20s, known for his honesty, and called Al-Amin, the trustworthy. Khadija first met him as a business partner. She trusted him with her caravan. When Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam returned from Sham with the highest profit Mecca had ever seen, Khadija realized he had won not only in business, but also her heart. Her admiration for him, combined with his honesty, humility, and dignity, led her to send someone to propose marriage to him herself. The marriage of Khadija and Muhammad was like a breeze of paradise in the winds of the Meccan desert. Together they had 6 children: Qasim, Abdullah, Zainab, Ruqayya, Kulthum, and Fatima. Khadija made her home a place of love and always stood firmly behind her husband. And one day, when the first revelation came to Muhammad on Mount Hira, she trembled with him. Seeing her husband come home worried and afraid, she said, "By Allah, Allah will never disgrace you. You keep ties with your family, you speak the truth, you help the weak, you honor guests, and you support the truth against injustice." She was the first Muslim, the first to believe, the first to pray, the first to give charity, the first to face hardship. In the hardest days of Islam, she spent all her wealth for this cause. During the years of boycott in Mecca, she stood by the Prophet and the Muslims through hunger and thirst. She never left her faith, never feared the pressure or the burning sands of the desert. Her loss shook the Prophet so deeply that the year she passed away became known as the Year of Sorrow. Even years later, the Prophet shed tears for her and remembered her with kindness. The life of Khadija teaches every Muslim woman what courage, sacrifice, and loyalty mean. She was not only the Prophet's wife, but also Islam's first refuge, its first mother, and one of its greatest heroes, remembered until the Day of Judgment. Fatima bint Muhammad, and another woman who followed in Khadija's footsteps, her daughter Fatima, the youngest daughter of her father and the leader of the women of paradise. She opened her eyes in the dark, cruel streets of Mecca. When she was just a little girl, she saw her father being stoned at the Kaaba, a rope tied around his neck and dragged, and filthy animal parts thrown on his head. But with her small body and trembling hands, she always stood by him. While wiping the dust from his face, she whispered, "Don't worry, Father. When Allah is with you, who can harm you?" In those days, the people of Mecca mocked her, calling her the mother of her father, because her love, her care, and her compassion were like a mother's. When she grew into a young woman, many asked for her hand. But Fatima's heart was destined for Ali, one of the closest to the Prophet. Their wedding was simple but full of blessings. Her dowry was little, but their home was full of peace and Allah's mercy. Fatima's heart was filled with humility, patience and trust in Allah. With Ali, she became the mother of two of Islam's great figures, Hassan and Hussein. When the Prophet saw his daughter Fatima, he would stand up, kiss her hand and praise her as the leader of the women of paradise. In Medina, even in the hardest days, her biggest support was always for her father. But her father's death was like the sun setting in her heart. From that day, Fatima lived with longing, saying, "Life has no taste after my father." She rarely left her home, spending her days with patience and dua. Finally, only 6 months after her father, she passed away in Medina. She was still in her early 20s. Her funeral was held quietly at night, and her grave remains hidden, like a secret of her humble and sorrowful heart. After her death, her husband Ali wept much, wrote poems for her, and mourned her for days. The life of Fatima teaches every Muslim woman the meaning of dignity, compassion, and patience. She was a woman who stood strong even in the hardest times, never losing her faith, love, or nobility. Asiya bint Muzahim. She grew up in the richest, most magnificent palaces in the world, golden pillars, silk curtains, servants, and commands. As the wife of Pharaoh, the powerful ruler of Egypt, everyone envied her. But Asiya's heart did not care for worldly splendor. She was searching for something deeper and stronger. One day, when she saw a basket on the waters of the Nile, she found a crying baby inside. On his face was a unique light, in his eyes a special wisdom. Asiya embraced this baby and said to her husband Pharaoh, "This child is a joy for me and you. Do not harm him, maybe we will adopt him." She said, "Do not harm him," because Pharaoh had decided to kill all the babies after a dream he saw. Even though Asiya opposed this, she could not change his decision, but she managed to protect this baby. This baby was Musa, and from that day, a closeness to his Lord entered Asiya's heart. Years later, when Musa stood before Pharaoh by Allah's command and spoke the truth, Asiya was the first to hear his words in the highest rooms of the palace. Her heart trembled at Musa's words, and she recognized her Lord. She prayed in her heart, "My Lord, save me from Pharaoh and his evil deeds, and keep me away from the wrongdoers." But this faith was too big to hide inside the golden walls of the palace. When Pharaoh learned she believed, he became furious. He decided to torture her, the woman who had once been his wife. They laid her down in the desert, tied her hands and feet to stakes, and put a heavy stone above her head, asking her to leave her faith. But Asiya lifted her head to the sky, with peace in her heart and dua on her lips. "My Lord, build for me a house with you in paradise." At that moment, Allah showed her her place in paradise. Her face became bright, and her body no longer felt pain. She became a martyr under Pharaoh's cruelty, but her name was written in Allah's book, and she remains an example of patience and surrender until the day of judgment. Asiya taught women not only patience, but also what it means to give up everything for Iman, to leave the world behind and surrender to Allah. She was a noble woman who turned her back on palaces and worldly power and chose Allah and His love. May Allah have mercy on her. Maryam bint Imran. When her mother was carrying her in the womb, she prayed, "My Lord, protect her and her descendants from Shaitan." Maryam was surrounded by Allah's protection even at birth. Her father Imran passed away before seeing her birth, but her mother dedicated her to Bayt al-Maqdis. Little Maryam grew up within the walls of the masjid. Her intelligence, her modesty, and her love for worship won everyone's hearts. Prophet Zechariah, who looked after her, would find fruits and food with her that didn't even belong to that season. When he